Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ryan Scully, coming to you today for the latest edition of my All Things Virtual Instrument tutorial series. Today, I'm excited because we're going in a bit of a different direction than my prior videos, and instead, we're going to be taking a user's walkthrough / tutorial of a brand new software synthesizer from Wide Blue Sound titled Orbit. So Orbit is very innovative in its presentation, and really what it focuses on is the constant evolving sound, and it avoids any kind of real static performance, which is certainly welcomed in today's environment for music production. It has over 101 different sound sources, and you have these 4 what are called orbital samplers, and you can run 4 of them independently, and they each focus on a different evolving sound over time. And then you also have different modes where you can have rhythmic manipulation of your sounds, both in pulse, which focuses more on rhythmic percussive sounds, chop, which is more of your stutter type sounds, and then flow, which is really great for your evolving textural pads, which are going to give you some really, really great sounds. What we're going to do through the course of this user's tutorial from a user's perspective is we're going to go through a bunch of the wide array of presets that come loaded, and you have different categories, as you can see as I'm scrolling here, that are all focused on those types of rhythmic manipulation modes. So you have chop, you have flow, different effects, and then pulse. We'll look through the interface in detail to show you everything that comes loaded in it. As you can see, this is our main Orbit page. As you go into effects, you have a number of different effects available through Contact, which is screen, distort, phaser, delay, different types of really nice convolution, reverbs and underspace, and then you have your standard low-pass filter. And then you also have this really great and interesting feature using 4 independent sequencers that will control a variety of different parameters throughout Orbit. And we'll look at all of these in detail as we go through. Like I said, we'll take a look through the presets, some of the functionality that you have at your fingertips, and then we'll build a patch from the ground up just so you could see what goes into doing that, and then also the speed at which you can get something interesting that will work in your workflow, because that's what really one of the great selling points of Orbit is that you can get ready-made sounds very quickly and put it to immediate use with little fuss. Before we get started, let me just show you what the patch structure looks like in Orbit. Let's just go over into Browse here. And this, to me, at least personally, is really welcoming, and we're starting to see it more in some modern sound design libraries for Contact. Orbit is all self-contained within one single NKI. So you literally just instantiate this. It gives you the main page of Orbit here, and everything that you need and everything that you're going to build within Orbit is all self-contained in the one patch. So you're not going to have to remember multiple patches and file them and save them in different ways. I mean, which you can do, but this, to me, personally, is a really nice touch. All right, so let's get started. We'll go in and let's find a preset that we want to go with. Why don't we start with chop, and let's check out jumpers, see what that's all about. And then we'll take a look through the functionality and basically how you can start manipulating it rhythmically, these patches. Okay, so as you see here, there's one consistent sound source that's being used through each of the orbits, which is called trafficy. I'll show you some cool things that you could do as well from a randomizing standpoint. But right now it's utilizing the chop function. The rate is the speed at which it's going to be going through, basically like a type of this LFO functionality. The depth, so the intensity of that, and then the gate, so how far open your gate's going to be to travel through the envelope. And then you have your standard attack and release functions. So let's see what it sounds like. All right, so pretty cool. So you could see how each one of these independent orbits are moving. Now, one of the things I want to show you right off the bat, which I think is a really great feature to this, is down here on your key switches. So starting with F, you see as I'm going through these F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. as I'm pressing these are activating and deactivating the orbits. So it's a nice way if you're loading up a patch where you can quickly audition the sound of the different orbits. So check that out as I do this. Let me deactivate each of them. All right, so let's turn on the first one. Okay, we'll add the second one. All right, very, very cool. I like that. Basically, if you're working within your composition, just that in and of itself gives you a nice performance feature of this plug where you can add some interest over time. All right, so already sounding very cool. Let's see what else is going on this patch. What I've done is I've gone and for the rate knob here, I've assigned it to my mod wheel or CC1. So let's just see what we can do as we play with that over time here. Okay, so cool. Just as with any other contact instrument, it's very easy. You just right click and you can MIDI learn. So I've gone ahead and I've done that. We're seeing the gate control here. Take a look and see what's happening. See how it's moving ever so slightly. So let's move over to the sequencer. Okay, so you have 4 activated sequencers. I've actually deactivated the one on the bottom, which is controlling the filter. So up here, we have distort, reduce. Okay, so if we go on the effects page, distort, it's modulating the reduce amount. Okay, for here, we have the orbiting gate. So here's where we see that ever so slight movement on the gate from the orbit page. So we see what the sequencer is doing right there. And then we're also affecting the global panning amount for all 4 of the orbits. So just like I was showing you before, the key switches that can mute and unmute the 4 independent orbits by themselves, these key switches right here actually activate and deactivate the sequencers, which you can also do in real time. So let's check that out. Okay, so this is without the sequencers activated. Now we can start turning them back on. Awesome. So just as you could see with some very quick tweaks, both at the sequencer level and then also just from the main page here and with the effects, you could get a completely unique sound, just as we were saying up front, which the intention is to have it evolve over time. So already just taking a look into the first preset, that's a really nice, highly usable sound that provides a lot of rhythmic interest. All right, so let's check out another preset using one of the different modes. So let's move on over to Pulse, and let's try Droploid. Okay, so as you see, it just loads up a completely different preset at this point. So let's see what this one sounds like. All right, cool. Let's see what it sounds like if we move to chop. You could do this also. All right, very cool. As you see, I was moving my mod wheel on the rate knob, and I actually have CC11 assigned to the gate control. So as I was pulling back on the gate, you could really hear the stutter effect coming through also. So for this particular patch, we didn't have any of the sequencers highlighted. So let's go on over and take a final look over into Flow, and then we will design a patch from the ground up. All right, so let's move on over to the Flow presets. Let's check out Dear Diary. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, very nice. So quickly, as you can see, just running through 3 different presets featuring the 3 different types of modes. And I could just also say that with your sequencer, you could actually modulate the type of mode mid-patch as well. That's one of the modulation features allowed with the sequencer. But from this, we have a really nice ethereal pad that was evolving over time. And as you can see, I was manipulating the rate knob, seriously affected the time at which it was going through. Now, let's just say you want to roll the dice and you like the way everything was moving on this, and let's see if you want to randomize that. So let's check out random here, which is going to pull 4 completely different sound sources together into your 4 orbits. All right, so now we're dealing with something completely different. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, very cool, highly usable sound. We basically took a chance to randomize the 4 orbits together, and that's what that gave us. So again, very cool feature. It's very easy to make something that is completely usable and unique. And we all know how the importance of being unique out there today is with music production. All right, so let's create something from scratch really quick, just to see what we can get going in a short amount of time, just tweaking some parameters. We're going to work within the pulse mode right now. And then I'm also going to show you how you can save your presets so you can recall these in the future if you want to use them again. So we're starting right now from the initialize patch. So this is what comes up when you instantiate the instrument in Kontakt. And you'll see right off the bat with the 4 orbital samplers that you have Aura Sweep is chosen as the sound source for each one. Now, one thing I could just tell you too, before we get into designing the patch, if you say, let's just say for instance, we chose this sound source right now, and say we really like this, so let's mute these ones here. So that is the sound in our bank, in our first orbital bank right now. So if we go and hit clone, this is actually going to copy this into the 3 remaining orbital sound sources. So let's do that. Okay, you see, so that's what happens here. Just a quick little handy thing to know about the operational nature of that. So, but let's just go back again to initialize, and yeah, let's do something that's a little bit more on the aggressive side, and we'll, like I said, we'll keep it on the pulse, and we'll see what we could come up with quick. So whenever you click on here, like as you could just see, you actually have genres for the type of sound source that you want to go with. So you have dark, dreamy, mysterious, and then aggressive. So for our first orbital sampler, why don't we choose, let's see, this one right here, bleeped. For our second one, why don't we go to dark, and we'll choose earth. For our third orbital, we'll go down again to aggressive, and we'll choose, let's see, rectory. And then for our final one, we'll just go back to aggressive again. We'll choose big metal. Okay, so that sounds pretty interesting just off the bat. So let's just hear what that sounds like without any tweaking yet. Okay, very cool just off the bat for a rhythmic figure. So like we said, we have pulse right now. So let's start getting into detail of the sound. We'll move over to the effects page and then see what we could do with the sequencer to try to quickly get this to an original sound that you'd use for yourself. Okay, so here we are over on the effects page right now. So again, just as the sound of our source material. So let's use some of the effects to dirty this up and space it out a little bit. So let's turn on our distort. Okay, so definitely dirty. We'll work with this with the sequencer. And let's turn on the delay so we can give ourselves some spaciousness with that. Okay, and again, just a disclaimer, we're doing this very quickly. So obviously with some luxury of time, you could do more. But let's head on over to the sequencer page right now. So for the first one here, we're going to do distort drive. Actually, we'll keep that on. Let's instantiate this. So right now, this has set for 16 steps. So you can obviously go much further than that, all the way up to 64 steps on your sequencer. But in the instance of time and simplicity, let's just work with something really quick here. So let's go down to 4. We're going to again modulate distortion drive, and let's do some pretty extreme settings. So basically just some quick on and off. And right now it's set to the rate for 16th notes. Why don't we move that up a little bit so it could be a little bit more drastic. Let's go to 32nd notes. So right now this is what this is going to sound like. Okay, so I moved my mod wheel down a little bit, which affected the rate of the pulse. So that, in tandem with the 32nd notes on the sequencer, kind of gave it a little bit more rhythmic variety right there. All right, so we got something going on right there. Now let's move on to the next sequencer we have available to us. Right now it's set up to global volume, so let's work with that. So let's turn this on. And one other thing I'll show you this. Right now, you can create your own arrays that you'd want to use again. Maybe if you come up with something that's really interesting from a rhythmic standpoint, from the sequencer, you could actually save them with this button. But it also comes stock with some pre-made ones. So let's take a look and see if we can find something we want to use here. Obviously, you have init up here, which will start it on the blank side. Let's say, let's look at driving. So double click that. So now as you see, this brings this in. And also, these sliders here actually enable the intensity of the sequencer itself. So for the drive, why don't we pull that down a little bit so it's not as imposing as it was. And for the volume, let's just pull that down a little bit too. Let's hear what this just sounds like right now. Okay, we could probably do a little bit better than that. So let's pull down the steps. Let's work with something a little bit easier here. All right, let's hear what this sounds like. All right, so, pretty cool. Something very quick just to get together right here. And like we were just saying before, if you want to deactivate these, you can just use your key switches. So let's turn those two off. This was our source sound. Obviously, that's also with the distortion and the delay instantiated. So now let's turn our two sequencers on. All right, so, really quick. It's interesting, really dirty, something that you can have going on for some underscore or to bring up for some percussive, to bring a little bit more interest into a percussive line that you might have going on right now. So let's just say, we're pretty happy with this, and now we want to save this as a preset. So let's go back to the main Orbits page, and I'll show you how that's handled with Orbit. So Orbit utilizes the snapshot feature in Contact. What the snapshot feature is it basically, it takes exactly that, a snapshot of whatever you have going on with the patch, and it remembers all of your parameter settings or any kind of changes that you've made within the patch for recall later. And that's actually how all of the presets have been saved, and there's instructions when you install the library, when you bring the preset folders in for Contact for use with Orbit. So you can actually see what I'm showing you here right now. I have this little folder that I made. It's called User. So this will be a space where any patches that I create of my own, I can later go in and put them in my User folder. But for right now, so we're back with our little pulse rhythmic figure that we just created. So now we want to save this. So to do that with the snapshot feature, you come over to this little icon here that represents kind of a floppy disk, and you click on that. Now it just tells you, since we started from the init patch, we'll say a file with this name already exists. So now let's just rename it, and we'll call it Orbit tutorial. And then we're going to do save as. Okay, so now this snapshot has been saved as Orbit tutorial. And if I pull this up right now, you actually see it on its own. I can later go back into the folder structure and then drag this into init, or if I wanted to actually put it in the pulse folder, I could do that as well. So it's a very handy. So obviously if I go to init, right now we're back to the start here, and let's just say I wanted to pull back our Orbit tutorial patch again. It's back up with all of the sequencers, effects, and everything that we selected for this particular patch. All right, so that kind of just in a very, very quick nutshell is taking a patch from the ground up, but you can see the potential that the instrument gives you as far as creative freedom and a way to make things interesting while having a completely non-static sound, because the orbits are constantly evolving over time, which certainly leads to the interesting and creative aspect of the instrument. All right, so that brings us to the end of this user's tutorial for Orbit from Wide Blue Sound. I am very much looking forward to incorporating this instrument into my own productions. I hope you found this helpful and or informative if this is your first look at Orbit. I think it has an immense amount of creativity to offer in terms of modern production, and it takes a lot of what would take you a very long amount of time to do with synthesizers, and puts it in a really easy to follow, concise manner to where you can focus really on creativity rather than having to worry so much about routing and modulation, because it really does offer that to you in a really efficient manner. So if you are interested in the instrument, definitely head over to widebluesound.com for more information on the instrument itself as well as purchase. So again, I'd like to thank you for tuning in with me today. Definitely, share and or subscribe. I appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks again.